Literary passage, fiction. In this module, you will learn to comprehend literary passages and answer questions based on them. We already know that a literary passage is usually narrative in style and may comprise a poem, a short story, a narrative prose, or shorter extracts from these for comprehension. How do we analyze literary passages? We analyze them by comprehension, interpretation, and drawing conclusions. Literary passages require in-depth examination of elements like setting, characters, plot, and point of view. Attempting such a passage requires a student to read, examine, and understand it in detail and answer the questions based on it. Let us now look at how we can actually attempt answering comprehension questions based on a literary passage. Here it is very important to know what kind of questions we may be asked. The following types of questions can be asked based on a literary passage. Factual questions. These questions require fact-based answers. There is only one correct answer possible, which everyone eventually agrees on. Interpretative questions. These questions require the readers to return to the text and explain what is meant by a given statement from the passage. The readers are thus drawn into a deeper understanding of the passage. These questions may also comprise the ones related to the main idea. Evaluative questions. In such questions, the reader's personal opinion may be stated. They may express their own opinion or point of view about the idea or theme that has been presented in the passage. Questions related to vocabulary in context. These questions may refer to a specific sentence or statement in the passage and ask for the meaning of a particular word or a phrase in context. The readers may also be asked to locate a word in the passage that is either similar or opposite in meaning to a given word or phrase. Questions related to the author's technique. Such questions ask the readers about the author's tone, style, or other specific techniques used in a given passage. Now, let us look at the major steps to be followed while attempting a literary passage. First of all, always read the entire passage very carefully. Do not just skim through it to get a general idea. Skimming through a literary passage may result in missing out on some very important points, which may be important for understanding the main idea of the passage or for answering any particular question. If you do not read the whole passage carefully, you may have to return to the passage again and again, which will waste a lot of your precious time during the exam. Now, we will see how to attempt questions based on literary passages. Let's read a sample literary passage. Sam could not understand how to deal with his students, but one day he suddenly had a bright idea. He analyzed it many times before finally entering the classroom. He knew it well that it could get rough, but he just had to go with it. As he walked in, the students became silent but not particularly attentive. I think that it is high time I tell you what plans I have for this class. He tried to be his most pleasant self, despite what he was going to state. We are all old enough to be reasonable, right? He had not exactly framed or chosen the particular words to use before stepping in, and he was regretting it now. He was prepared to drop the speech if he felt things going sideways. He had managed to pique the interest of the students, maybe because no one else treated them as adults. As you will soon be leaving school, your little haven of safety for the outer world, it's time each one of you realize that people not just treat you as an adult, but you are also expected to behave like one. From now on, if there are any disagreements between us, we will have a healthy discussion. But we will do this in a civil and mature way. I will now treat all of you not merely as children, but as young men and women. As for being students, aren't we all already students in the classroom of life? Just then, the door was flung open, startling the entire class, and in walked Alicia. She strode into the room without caring for the fact that she was extremely late to class and without even asking for the teacher's permission. Had it been some other regular day, Sam would have been rattled and started stuttering at this point. But that day was different. He calmly continued, "Now, in the real world, if you storm into a workplace considerably late, I doubt that your employer would be kind enough to tolerate it. Maybe Alicia would like to demonstrate how to enter a room full of people." Till that day, Alicia had prided on always being the center of attention. But that day, the looks that came her way were different. The other students were waiting to see what would happen next, as no one had ever challenged Alicia before, not even a teacher. She blushed and didn't know what she should do. "Well, Alicia?" Alicia knew she had met her match. Her angry eyes bore into Sam's as she stood up and walked out, quietly closing the door behind her. She then opened the door softly, much to Sam's surprise and relief, and then sought the teacher's permission before entering. After Sam permitted her entry, she walked in with as much grace and dignity as she could muster. Thus, Sam's initial attempt to win over his students had been successful. Now that we have carefully read the text, let's try to understand what the passage is about. After reading the passage, we can easily conclude that the passage is about Sam's personal experience with his students. It is written as a third-person narrative. The main character, Sam, is a teacher who created a sense of understanding in a classroom of hostile teenagers. We therefore have an overview of the passage. Now let's move over to the questions. Question 1. Why did the teacher want the students to practice courtesy? Question 2. Why was the teacher annoyed with Alicia? Question 3. How did Alicia react? Question 4. Do you think the teacher had planned the whole talk carefully? Give reasons for your answer. Question 5. Choose the most appropriate words or phrases in the passage that have the same meaning as the following. A. Awaken, para 2. B. Shelter, para 3. Before attempting to answer, read the questions a couple of times to determine what exactly each question requires you to answer. Answer the specific question and don't just write a summary of the paragraph. The first question is, why did the teacher want the students to practice courtesy? To find the answer for this question, scan through the passage to look for keywords, practice courtesy, and students or words similar in meaning to them. Read the lines that go before or follow the keywords. You may sometimes have to read the entire paragraph. These keywords aren't directly located in the passage, but we know that courtesy is related to behavior. We can find lines which contain the word behave. These sentences give us the required answer. The teacher wanted the students to practice courtesy as they would be moving out of school soon and into the outer world. Good behavior would be expected of them, and so they would have to be courteous and mature. Now let's move on to the second question. Why was the teacher annoyed with Alicia? This is a why question which asks us for a reason. We can find the answer somewhere in Alicia's actions that may have made the teacher upset. Let us look for such actions in the passage. We also have to take note of the fact that the teacher had been talking about good behavior before she entered. So the answer is, the teacher was annoyed with Alicia as she had come very late to the class. Moreover, instead of asking his permission before entering the classroom, she had opened the door and stridden in to occupy her seat in a disrespectful manner. Now let's move on to the third question. What was Alicia's reaction? This is a factual question. The answer to this is clearly given in the passage. Look at the highlighted lines. If we rephrase them, we have our answer. The teacher's words had come as a challenge to Alicia. She felt embarrassed as the whole class was staring at her. She was very angry and humiliated, but she stood up and walked out, closing the door quietly behind her. Then she opened it quietly and sought Sam's permission before entering. After Sam permitted her, she walked to her seat with dignity and grace. Let's try and answer the fourth question now. Do you think the teacher had planned the whole talk carefully? Give reasons for your answer. This is an evaluative question which requires the reader to express his or her own idea or opinion. Look at these lines for example. The narrator tells us right at the beginning of the passage that Sam had conceived the idea that very day, so he did not have time to plan things. A little later, the narrator again comments about what Sam was saying to the students in the class. So the answer should be no. The teacher had not planned anything at all. In fact, he had conceived the idea that very day. Whatever he said to the students was spontaneous. In fact, he was ready to drop the speech if he felt it was not going in his favor. Let us look at the last question based on the passage. Choose the most appropriate words or phrases in the passage that have the same meaning as the following. A. Awaken, para 2. B. Shelter, para 3. This is a vocabulary-based question. When attempting to find the meaning of a new word, look at what comes before and after that word. The surrounding words can give context clues about the meaning of the word as well as how it is used. In the second paragraph, the narrator talks about the students' interest. He had managed to pique the interest of the students, maybe because no one else treated them as adults. So the most relevant word that is similar in meaning to awaken is pique. The next word is shelter. In the third paragraph, the teacher says, as you will soon be leaving school, your little haven of safety for the outer world, it's time each one of you realize that people not just treat you as an adult, but you are also expected to behave like one. The only word in these lines that has the same meaning as shelter is haven. Now let us recap the steps to be followed to comprehend the passage and answer the questions based on it. Carefully read the passage to infer the main idea and the technique or tone of the author. Read the questions carefully to determine what exactly each question is asking for. Also identify the keywords. Read 2 lines before and after the line or keywords on which a question is based. Use context clues to determine the meaning of a word or phrase. The same technique is also used to locate a word in the passage that is either similar or opposite in meaning to a given word or phrase. Answer the specific question and don't write a summary of the paragraph. Your answer should be exactly relevant to the question asked. Answer the questions based on your reading and understanding. A few things to remember while framing answers. Avoid copying the lines or paragraphs from the passage. Rephrase them in your own words to answer a question. Don't write irrelevant things as part of your answer. Write only what has been asked for and base your answer on the information provided in the passage. Don't begin your answers with because. Do not write incomplete sentences. Reread your answers and correct grammatical and structural errors, if any. Let's practice. Read the passage and answer the questions that follow. Let's recap. A literary passage is narrative in style and consists of a poem, a short story, a narrative prose, or extracts from these for comprehension. The following types of questions may be asked from a literary passage: factual questions, interpretative questions, evaluative questions, questions based on vocabulary in context, questions related to author's technique. There are certain steps that need to be followed to comprehend the passage and answer the questions based on it. Carefully read the passage to infer the main idea. Read the questions carefully and identify the keywords. Answer the specific questions and don't write a summary of the paragraph. A few things should always be remembered while framing answers. Avoid copying the lines or paragraphs from the passage. Rephrase them in your own words to answer a question. Don't write irrelevant things as a part of your answer. Write only what has been asked for and base your answer on the information provided in the passage. Don't begin your answers with because. Do not write incomplete sentences. Reread your answers and correct grammatical and structural errors, if any.